Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Captive Audience. This is your host, Don Anderson and Sonny Danforth. Sonny, what's going on?
Well, let me tell you, it is hot over here on Northeast Oregon. It was 102 yesterday, and I actually
Ooh,
don't know the temperature today, but about 2 hours ago when I was in my car, it said it was 98. So it's warm,
triple
but
digits.
it's
Yeah,
beautiful. I
yeah.
tell you, it's a beautiful day, but yet I see smoke from fires around,
Oh,
I was like, oh, please. And
yeah.
we're surrounded with out here right now is standing wheat ready
Hmm.
to be getting ready to get harvested. So we don't
Right.
want any fires around here.
No, that's
We don't
for
want any
sure.
fireworks either
Yeah.
this 4th of July because we want the fields to be able to be harvested, even though
Yes.
I love seeing fireworks.
Well, hopefully it's we don't have the fires like they were a few years ago. So nothing could
Yes.
be as bad as that. So yeah, we haven't hit triple digits yet here. We got it was like 93 a couple of days ago. And what's strange here is it normally doesn't peak in heat in the western part of the state till
Mhm.
probably 4 or 5 o'clock. And usually it's cool till 3. But a couple of days ago it was really weird. It got hot, but when it's hot at 11 or 12, you know it's gonna be hot. So
Yes, exactly. At like 8 o'clock this morning, it was 80 degrees or 81. I went, oh boy, it's going to get really hot.
yeah, that's like that Palm Springs, that's that desert thing, right? Where the low is 80 in the summer.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
You
Yeah,
know
more
about
like
that.
90 at night and,
Yeah.
110 in the day. So yeah, yeah, I don't miss that at all.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, hey, I thought this evening I would start. I wrote this rant, and I'm just going to put this in the chat for those of you. And I entitled it The Tyranny of Compassion. And I thought I'd just speak for just a couple of minutes about what I mean by that. And if you all can read it, I think you'd enjoy it. So basically, think about what I was in a conversation not too long ago. I had to listen to a discussion, and it was all about being compassionate to the illegal immigrants and their plight in terms of being here. And now they're living in fear that they might get picked up, even the ones that haven't done crime, and on and on and on. And we need to be compassionate and show mercy and all this kind of thing. And the natural response to decent people is we do feel bad. And I would think something was wrong with this if we didn't. However, what the left has done is use that as a cudgel to allow our emotions to take over from the facts of the case. And one of the things I wanted to present to you all and my kids as well is to have the argument to counter against this, what I call the tyranny of compassion, which makes you freeze and you feel guilty and you feel like you can't say anything because immediately the rejoinder is going to be you're mean, you're evil, you're racist, you're sexist, you're homophobic, you hate immigrants, all the usual things that come back at us. And I think the way that that needs to be turned is, you know, I have compassion too, but I have compassion for the Americans who are going to be hurt by this illegal immigration. So I have compassion for them first because it's the black, it's the brown, it's the poor whites who are first going to be have their lives impacted by this influx of illegal immigration. It's their school systems to get destroyed first. It's their neighborhoods to get ravaged by crime. It's their jobs that they can no longer get because they're in competition with illegal immigrants who work under the table. It's their medical systems that are going to be like completely destroyed and they never get access because the lines at the wazoo, because we're giving away money to people who aren't even citizens that remember they're going to turn around and get back to a country that then is flooding our country with like drugs. And who do you think is being hurt by that the most? Again, it's the poor whites, blacks, and brown folks who are getting hammered by that. So that's where our compassion is. And we need to start articulating that and not let ourselves be tyrannized by, I call it the tyranny of compassion. And one last point I make on this, you will notice that the kindest, nicest people, the cities that have the biggest reputations for that are the ones that get destroyed the most. What's the reputation of Minneapolis? The city of nice. What's the reputation of Seattle and Portland? These are like the people that were here before all this were really nice people. But you can't let nice get in the way of being firm and admonishing the sinner. And we got to stop being afraid to tell people no. We're not going to do that. So there's my opening rant, if you will. Hope you enjoyed the article, and I'll stop right there.
Well, I'll tell you that's absolute common sense, and you're spot on right, Don. Very, very much. To have people are fearful of being called racist, and that you just don't care, uh, and yet we do. It is compassion for our fellow Americans, and it's not like now Biden invited these people in, even though he said, oh no, let's see, it was Harris who said, do not come. Remember that? Do not
Yes.
come. What do you have to say to the people coming to the border? Do not come.
That'll stop him.
Now that was not with force either, or
Mhm.
determination. And I'll tell you, coming in exactly what Lori just said too, is come in the correct way. It will remove the fear, because that is it. Immigrants are welcome. You have to come through the front door. And we do have to have compassion, because how many stories do we have to see on the news about an American citizen that has now been killed, gotten in a major car wreck, and their life is altered forever. Maybe they've survived, but their life is altered forever because it was just bad. And every country in the world has borders, every single one, and we have the right to have a sovereign border.
Yeah, if you don't have a border, you don't have a country.
Yeah.
And we talk about the rule of law. How can you have the rule of law when we've got cities calling themselves sanctuary cities, which essentially means we're going to ignore certain laws? Well, that can't fly. We fought a
Mm.
war over that very issue already. And so I don't, for the life of me, I can't understand why no one's confronted this whole sanctuary city in the first place. That is unconstitutional and illegal. And I'm glad to see that that's being directly attacked. In fact, I just heard this morning. Maybe you heard this, but Trump is suing personally the mayors of several cities, one of them being Los Angeles, over this issue. They're discriminating against federal law enforcement officers versus other officers. I think that's the basis of the suit,
Mhm.
in terms of how they're treating them and that sort of thing. But that has to happen. If our next constitutional crisis, if there's one coming, I think it's going to be over this very issue. These blue cities that are refusing to enforce the law, and in fact, preventing the federal government from enforcing the law, because we're not a country. If the states or municipalities can decide which one of the laws they're going to follow and which ones they're not, that's precisely what the Democrats did in 1860.
Yes, and we have, when it comes to immigration, states don't have any laws about that. It is a federal law, and only the federal laws are the only laws that are governing our immigration, period. So the states truly don't have a say in that, although I say that, but yet Texas fought the federal government, but Texas is a whole nother state altogether. They've got special rights. And Texas said, you know what? We are going to stop these illegals because the federal government's not doing their job. So we're going to stop them from coming into our country. So that, I think, is a very valid argument, but an argument of saying, well, they can come here because the federal government isn't allowing them in. We are going to allow them in. That is a whole nother argument that does not fly. I don't believe in sanctuary cities. I don't believe in the states going, well, we're just going to, if a federal, you can take it to many levels, Don. We
Mhm.
have drugs that are illegal in as a federal class, whatever they are, right? Let's just take marijuana. It's still a illegal. You can't put your proceeds in a bank from marijuana, but yet we have states that have passed and legalized that. But you see, that type of thing is not in the Constitution. Immigration is in the Constitution. That's the big difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and the reasons that that are in addition to this whole constitutional argument, which I think is the most important one. But you look at the ramifications of having a wide open border. The reason why countries exist in the first place is that different groups of people have different shared values and core beliefs. And when you don't have shared core values and common beliefs, you will start to come apart. Now, of course, the thing that makes the United States unique in all of the history of the planet is, and I'm sure if there's probably a couple of other cases dating back to the city states of ancient Greece, but this is the only one that I could think of that was founded on an idea.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it's a pretty amazing idea. The whole, and we all know the words, the opening lines, the Declaration of Independence. So it's not race, color, creed, or any of that. It's just, are you willing to align yourself with this belief system um, around freedom and our Constitution and the Bill of Rights? And if you do, you raise your right hand. You're born here, you get it automatically. You go through the process the right way. You raise your right hand and you swear fidelity to this. Then you're in, and you truly are in. If you want to become a German citizen, you're never going to be German. If you want to become a Japanese citizen, you're never going to be a Japanese citizen. You might have
Mhm.
citizenship, but you're never going to be. French, the same thing, right? This is like the only place in the world. And that's why people are kicking the door to come in. Who could blame them? It's the most successful system that man has ever created for governing himself. I think by far. Well, Britain was a close second, I would say, but after that, and that's the mother country. Let's get, that's where a lot of this stuff came from, and we just took what they did and did it better. Um, and and we need to like go back, and this goes back to teaching the foundational principles around why it's so successful, and not letting the left teach our kids the lies that they teach them.
Very true. And our schools are, as you said, are being destroyed. Communities are being destroyed and split up. Parks are being destroyed. So much money given to people that are, and this is where the Democrats just want to reward the illegals in our country, promoting them over the citizens of this country with giving them a phone, shelter, food, to where they are making more money. An illegal is making more money than an American, that a senior citizen that has worked and paid into the system their entire life, and they
Yeah,
are living better than an American senior citizen.
and
As
that's
that's
yeah.
not right.
And that points to, and I've listened to several lecturers who've kind of spoken to this phenomenon, and that is you have this leftist intellectual elite, if you will, who go off to college. This is basically an East Coast, West Coast phenomenon. Think Northeast elite in California, that whole thing. And they never work with their hands, and they basically talk for a living, and basically produce nothing. But they have more in common with the think of the European who does the same thing, and that's why you get this whole thing and want to be this global citizen, because they feel like if you live in I'll say if you're in Palo Alto, you have a lot more in common with this person who lives in you know say in Massachusetts near where Harvard, say Cambridge. You have a lot more person in common with the person in Cambridge than you do with the guy who lives down the street in East Palo Alto across the railroad tracks. I know there's railroad tracks because I know the area, right? You
Mhm.
have a lot more in common with the person in, Palos Verdes, California, than you do the person who's in like Omaha, Nebraska. So they have
Mhm.
this. They're replacing citizenship of a country with this whole world thing, and the
Yeah.
center of the country has come to know that. And those people have gravitated towards the Democrat Party, and this has happened in the last 30 years because, of course, the Democrat Party wasn't always like that. And so the working class who still believes in citizenship and the United States of America as a separate country, has gravitated towards Republicans. This wasn't like this 30 or 40 years, but that's where we are. Um, Now, the good news for us is I think the majority of people, once they understand this message, they will vote the right way. And that's what's happening. In spite of them, the left, having control over the entire apparatus. When you think about how amazing this is to be where we are, to have the House, the Supreme Court, and the executive, when they have the university system, the public school system, the sports media, Hollywood, uh, every the major businesses, you know, every what do you call it? Mass media, uh, uh, information technology media, every lynch point of information exchange, they own it, and they lost anyway. That's pretty remarkable.
Now they're losing. You're right. You are right. Except today I saw that if you, and maybe you've probably seen it too, that now the universities, it was I want to say Penn State, Pennsylvania, that said they are taking away from Leah Thomas, that swimmer,
Yes.
all of the awards, and they are giving them to the female swimmers. So there's a 180-degree now. They're going, okay, this has failed.
Hmm.
Transgender has failed. Hospitals have closed that are doing transgender surgeries. So that part has failed. Now, what else has failed is oh, I had another. You made a point on the the media, but that has now the narrative is changing in that. So the Democrats are losing more and more. Oh, I know. It was uh, Hollywood is in the tank. Production this morning when I was having coffee, I said something about uh, I saw on the ticker tape of the television this morning that Hollywood's production is in an absolute decline.
Hmm.
And so they're going to other areas to
Hmm.
make movies.
Hmm.
Well, that is saying, for example, like me, and I think there's probably a lot of people like me, I don't really know.
Hmm.
If it is not produced by a conservative producer and actors, I'm not interested to go see it because I will not fuel their message.
Oh,
I don't care. You know what? There's so many other ways to entertain myself that I
mhm,
don't need to promote spend my money
mhm,
on their production.
well,
So, and that's why, remember not too long ago, Don, we were talking about the Democrats' approval rating was like 22%, 25%. They're losing big time. They have no message.
yeah, it's horrendous. And going back to what you're saying about movies, I think a lot of people, there are people like us who making it, because I made a decision very similar to yours around that. But a lot of people too are just, they know in their guts without thinking about it. So you have that thinking percentage of the population, around 25 or 30%. The others respond to what entertains them. And they're tired of getting preached to, and they're tired of just junk. So if you look at the stuff they're putting out, it's just been terrible for the last 10 years.
Mhm.
I remember, being in my, from teenage to like probably in my early 50s, where you look forward to movies. Remember there was like
Yeah.
blockbusters, Memorial Day, the
Mhm.
summer blockbuster, the July 4th blockbuster, the September, what do you call it, Labor Day blockbuster, the Christmas holidays. And there was always three or four great movies. And I was telling my wife the other day, like when we I can't see anything. I've never even heard of anything. They're all atrocious. And there are going to be some preachy stuff, and there's going to be stuff that's completely offensive to you. So you just stop going.
Yeah.
Um, and you're taking. Here's another indicator. I saw this in the news just the other day. So you saw CNN lost another lawsuit to Trump. So they had to pay out 16 million to Trump. And this was over that 60 minutes manipulating the interview with Kamala Harris, like just brazen, right? Just brazen manipulation. But they've also lost 15 million. ABC, they're paying them out 15 million.
Yes.
And and Paramount CBS paid out another 16 million for similar kinds of things. So just like you said, their viewership is going in the toilet,
Yeah.
and people hear about this stuff, and they can see with their own eyes that the media has been lying to them. I mean, they looked us in the eye and told us that Biden was like squared away, right?
Yeah.
Completely squared
Yeah.
away. And then we
Yeah.
all see the debate, and there's no, if you're a conservative, you don't even have to sell that. It's kind of like Trump. Like, I love that line when he said, they asked him a question. I don't even know what he said.
Right. Right. I don't know what he said, and I don't think he knows either.
Yeah, it was like perfect. I mean, you don't have to debate that. That wasn't even a debate. That was the guy he just showed us what he was about. Trump could have just stood there. You and I could have just stood there.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's what the media is showing themselves 100% for who they are, and anybody who has a single brain cell working sees it. You can't deny it.
Well, 100%. And along these lines, it was just on Friday that the Supreme Court on June 30th threw out several lower court rulings that had to do with transgender procedures for minors. And so
Yes.
what they did is they upheld Tennessee's ban.
Mhm.
With the Supreme Court decisions that are, I would say, on the right side, that are correcting some wrongs of these radical judges.
Mhm.
This is really helping to move the needle as well. And I think a lot of people have woke up and go, we shouldn't be doing this, surgeries, mutilating the children, and also brainwashing them with pornographic books in school and that. So the Supreme Court decisions this past week were just fabulous.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I go back to, and again, I wish I could remember the guy who said this quote because I think it's such a great quote. It was a historian who said, "Men lose their minds quickly, and they regain their senses slowly." And I think we were all gaslit massively
Yeah.
from basically 2016, 2020 on, everywhere. And people, again, that kind compassion thing again. I don't want to tell this man that he's like not a woman. Um,
Yeah.
People had a hard time with that, right?
Yeah,
Because you feel,
definitely.
yeah, and so it took people finally a while to realize these people are destroying us. They're destroying themselves, but destroying all of us. And why are we letting them? So you take someone like this guy Thomas. Obviously, you got a mental disorder. If you're doing something like that, some kind of narcissistic like mental disorder going on for you to
Mhm.
do something like that. And when you and I were young, you just would have told them no. And that would have been the end of it.
Right.
But now we're entertaining crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not helping these people. The compassionate thing to do is to tell them you need to get some mental help. Your life's going to be disaster if you do that. And by the way, chopping minors is like a no brainer. But really, this stuff should be illegal for grown people too because it's not proven science.
Well, I agree with you in the not proven science, but for me, you know what? If an adult has a right to do what they want, as long as they can afford it, it should be an elective surgery, right? Why should the insurance company pay for it? It's an elective surgery, much like a woman wants to have a boob job done. That's an elective surgery. At least I think it is. I have no idea,
It
but
is.
it should be. You know, I mean, you have a
But
nose job if your nose gets smashed,
right.
but if your
Hmm.
nose is too, if you've decided that your
Hmm.
nose, you don't like your nose anymore, but there's no medical reason to except for your emotional well being, I would guess that that's an elective surgery. So I'm all for allowing adults to make those decisions, but hands off the children.
Yeah. Well, and
They,
and maybe
the
this
adult has to live with that decision. A
yeah,
child is not capable.
but doing something to yourself that way, and I guess maybe this is an ethical thing, and since physicians seem to have largely lost ethics, I suppose you could find somebody to do anything. I remember back when I lived in LA, there was this case, and they made the media. It was a big splash. This guy, there's a disorder. I don't know what the disorder is called, but this guy felt like he had to have his leg cut off. right? That's just, there was some sexual thing that he got to have his leg cut off. He couldn't find a physician in the United States to do it, of course, because nobody was unethical enough to do it. He's grown. You can have your leg cut off if you want, but nobody would do it. So he went down to Mexico and found a guy who cut his leg off, and the guy did. Of course, it was like a sideways job, and the guy like ended up dying, right? So there, you would think there'd be some ethical boundaries around physicians who, I'm not doing that. Um,
Right.
I'm
Now
not
that I
doing
totally
that.
agree with. It's up to the physician. Just because they're a physician, they
Yeah,
also have um their morals and their ethics and their God-given right to turn down something,
yeah,
and say no, that I'm not willing to do. For
mhm,
sure. For sure.
yeah,
I mean, I certainly don't support people mutilating their bodies, or I think they need a lot more counseling. In fact, even I've heard and read about stories that people that have plastic surgery can get quite addicted to plastic surgery. That it then becomes a real issue, because you're just, some people are thinking they're just never right. Well,
yeah,
I'll tell you, that's a whole, they need some counseling if
right.
you're
Yeah.
getting to that.
No, and yeah, and we've seen this with Hollywood people. They get in the plastic surgery business has gotten a lot better than it used to be for sure, but nonetheless, it ain't perfect. And it will reach a point where it just won't start looking good. And I'm sure I
Yeah.
won't name any names on here, but there's certain stars I've seen from my youth. I'm like, oh man, that's looking really bad now. Well, when they were younger, yeah, you knew it was plastic surgery, but it looked okay. I mean, it looked decent. I mean, and they get to their 80s, and man, it's like the wheels come off. And
Yeah.
but we've gone down that rabbit hole a little bit, haven't we?
So, people, there's nothing wrong with aging gracefully. There is
Yeah.
nothing wrong, and all of our looks change. I certainly don't
Mhm,
look like I did, when I was 25 at
mhm.
all. And but, well, similar, but I see a lot of changes, and you know what? That's just part of aging. My mother and I were having this conversation a few weeks back.
Mhm.
And anyway, okay, let's go on to a different topic, Dawn.
Yes. So what? Yeah, we got off track with that. Hope y'all enjoyed that. But yeah, so what was the other ones I saw? Let's see, gosh, because I had like pages and pages of stuff. It's been an amazing week, and so it's like hard to even know where to start. Well, here was here's like a good news one. So the Associated Press, the AP, the left wing AP ran this. U.S. job openings in May hit 7.8 million. Continued display of labor market resilience. Now you have to laugh at this because what have they been telling us? What have they been screaming the left that was going to happen as a result of the tariffs and all these things Trump's were doing?
Oh yeah.
Remember when they were crying about the price of eggs? You never hear any of that stuff anymore. The economy is exploding, and the stuff hasn't even had a chance to take place yet. The stock market's approaching or at NASDAQ all at near record highs. Why? Because the business world knows we reduce our taxes, you know, then we can go out and invest. We can go hire people. We can go build buildings. You tear the heck out of these other countries, and suddenly, you know what? We can build factories here. We got all kinds of, building products coming here that'll help the working class. They're already in process, and business gets ahead of that. And the stock market is a predictor of that. People are betting on what they think the future holds. That's what that is. Um, and inflation, whatever happened to that? We never heard about that.
No.
Eggs, all that stuff are at record lows. We're in the summer, and gas prices are low. What's up with that? Because they know we're gonna like drill, baby, drill.
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, absolutely. All of the fear mongering, but you see, that's all the Democrats know how to do, and
yeah,
every chance they get, that's all they're doing. It's just fear mongering. And what is so interesting is that it's not. I think there's more and more people that are just not buying it. Because you look at it and you go, "Oh, they're just fear mongering again." It's
yeah.
the
Well, yeah,
message is old.
well, people have heard it enough now that it's just rolling off of you now. It's like somebody lies to you. It's like Chicken Little. After a while, you like just start ignoring them. That's just them over there going off again, right?
Hmm.
Because it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You look at things like like the street rioting, around the ICE thing. It's completely contrived. It's very obvious. And everybody knows now that they're shipping people in and paying people to do this. It's
Yes.
not organic. The
No.
regular citizens aren't doing this. If you're familiar with Los Angeles, for example, when the riots happened during Rodney King, those things were spontaneous and they were everywhere. I mean, there was riots in Hawaiian Gardens, Pomona, East LA. I mean, it was, what do you call it? Hawthorne. If you know LA, you know the names of these towns I'm talking about. Those things were just happening all over the place. You look at this stuff now, it happens in like one small area, right? We decide we're
Yes.
going to have a riot at the 10 freeway, down by the interchange of the 101, because we know that's going to cause the maximum effect of jamming up traffic. And people know
Yes.
this.
Yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they
Oh,
do. So, hey, I have a good news story of a different
mhm.
sort. In Oregon, an Oregon China spy suspect has been arrested. And so he is
And
a,
Oregon.
yes, Oregon China spy suspect arrested. This is in Oregon Catalyst from the Taxpayer Association of Oregon. And it
Hmm.
says in that article that Fox News is reporting that a Chinese foreign national living in Happy Valley, Oregon, has been arrested over collecting intelligence about the Navy. So that's
Yeah.
great news. And I believe there's a whole lot of them. We had a lot of single, you know, uh, warrior age men coming across the border and so apparently he and some other people, there's a couple of them, traveled from to Houston on a tourist visa in April of this year
Hmm.
and was arrested Friday. Both individuals. And so it says, let me back it up just a second. Yeah, two Chinese guys
Hmm.
who reside in Happy Valley. So they've both been arrested and they are accused of facilitating a dead drop payment of cash on behalf of the Ministry of State Security. And so I think that's a great story that they've caught these guys
Hmm.
living right here in Oregon, the sanctuary state. And
And
I will tell you, I think that is going to haunt and come down on our governor. I'm so happy to see what our federal government is doing
mhm.
in going after these states.
Yeah, and we're going to have to. I mean, I tell you, this is, and we've talked about the whole asymmetrical warfare thing, that the Chinese have put this into place brilliantly. The Soviet Union used to do it too, but the Chinese have taken it to the next level. And I can't
Yeah.
remember there's a term that the Soviets had for it, but the Chinese have been brilliant at it. And you're not going to beat us head to head. No one is in a traditional war. So they go asymmetrical. And a lot of Americans don't realize that they've been warring on us. And this is the other thing, the left has been warring on us for like 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of a thing. And so these people
Yes.
work closely with the intellectual left. And you see it's opening the borders, by whoever was running Biden, because I don't think Biden did a thing. That worked great for the Chinese. Who would ever thought they would have balloons flying over military bases and we'd have an administration that was like cool with that? I mean,
Yeah.
it
I
goes
know.
list on and on. And of course, they fiddled with the elections. Of course, they were involved in the whole COVID thing. Who knows if we'll ever be able to untangle all of that. But the objective is to weaken the United States. And if you can structure things in such a way that we start having internal conflict, think of Europe. If the United States was 50 different countries, we are United States. People don't think about this. In other words,
Yes.
we're united many countries. If these were 50 different countries with 50 different laws, what do you think it would look like? Well, I'll tell you exactly what it would look like. It would look like Europe in the last century, where they're always at each other's throats.
Yeah.
That's what they want. And if they can peel off the most liberal states and get them to behave that way,
Yeah.
then that's what you do. And I almost think it's very strategic to see Oregon, Washington, California were always a little bit, left, but not crazy left. But in the last 20 years, it's gone crazy left. And what
Yeah.
they've done is we've they've managed to get the most left wing people from all over the country concentrated in certain places. They're a lot less dangerous when they're spread out. When they're in like concentrated in certain places, now you have your Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, Baltimore, Minneapolis, right? You get crazy stuff. And at the federal level, we're going to have to deal with it.
100%. And New York City might be getting that if that mayor wins of the general election. That
Yeah.
guy is off the rails crazy left.
Oh, yeah. That's communism steroids. And think to yourself, this is in a city that 25 years ago, radical Islamists killed 3,000 Americans like in a matter of a few minutes. And to
Yes.
think that that city in less than 25 years is voting for a radical Islamist. Now, I'm not saying that's it. They've with their weird voting thing, which is a whole other thing, they've gotten him to a position where he's running as the nominee of a major party. That is really sobering.
It is sobering, but I'll tell you what, keep doing it, Democrats, because more people will leave you. The more people, when they go, what? I was watching some news and people in New York were being interviewed. What do you think about that fella that won the Democrat primary? Oh, he'll never win anything because the real voters haven't voted yet. They come out in the general election. It's
Well,
like,
see, yeah, that's kind of my mindset. I'm glad you said that. I don't think the majority is that crazy. Now that small percentage that wants him, the
yeah,
ones that go to the universities, the ones that sit
yeah,
Bree, and live on the Upper West Side, and they're the ones with the money. They're going to give him all the media attention. And the guy's telegenic, no question. If you're someone that who's not going to ask questions about policy and what are you going to do and how is that going to work, if it's all raw emotion and all that, he's going to get you. But think about the number of not just the working class people there, but the people who've been victimized by the left over the last 4 years, the
yeah,
worst. Because again, it goes back to who gets beaten up by this stuff. It's not the people on the Upper West Side. They can afford to get a community, and they can afford to go hide out in the, you name their places where they go. They can go hide out in those Palisades and all these other kinds of places. The rest of the people, it's their neighborhoods, it's their hospitals, it's their schools, it's their parks that get destroyed. Their grocery stores, right? And so I'm of the opinion that unless they pull some electoral scam, I think that the current mayor is going to win. And the hilarious thing about it, even he had to leave the Democrat Party.
I know, right? He's
I mean,
going, you guys are too crazy for me.
yeah, he's not exactly a raving conservative,
No, he's not.
but he does have common sense.
Yeah, that leopard's changing spots just a little bit, It's
So
it's kind of funny,
I
to
think that
see.
guy look. Yeah, he's not what do you call it? A traditional. He's not a serious conservative. He licked his thumb, stuck out the window, and like most politicians say, "What do I got to say to get elected?" Right? But
Right, right.
you would take him over this guy.
The
So
lesser of two evils. The
the
lesser of two
lesser
evils. Yeah.
of two
Well,
evils,
that's
because
going to be one program to see, but the more that the Democrats peddle and the
mhm,
media is peddling this guy, the
mhm,
more Democrats are going, oh no, 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 we're not going that direction,
oh
and so maybe they'll decide to come over to the conservative side, the little more common sense side. I don't know. I hope
well,
so.
I think the leadership class on the left looks at him and they don't think in terms of morality. So take that off the table. They don't think in terms of what's best for America. Take that. They think purely in terms of how can we win? And this guy, I think they think this guy can't win. It's
Yeah.
the same reason why they took out their DNC chair a few weeks ago, right?
Yes.
Um, they're all about winning, and they're reading the tea leaves and like this guy is going to make it really bad for everybody else. I mean, can you imagine going to the midterms with somebody that's like an albatross? Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, look what they did to the president of the United States. They took him out because they didn't think he would win. Nobody ever elected Kamala Harris, to be the nominee. And it's like the Democrats, that's how they roll, though, for sure. I have
Yeah.
another piece, a different, totally different topic here, though. It is on China. This is from the Epic Times, and I want to post this article here. The CCP leaders are proposing regulations to rein in Xi's super agencies. So the Politburo, who's one of the agencies that oversees all of the Chinese Communist Party, they
Mhm.
are looking at ways to regulate some of these super agencies that made. He
Mhm.
centralized decision making power through different CCP program or groups.
Mhm.
So I found this article going, oh, let's see. So, China's top leaders are proposing new rules to regulate a set of powerful commissions and groups established nearly a decade ago by the
Mhm.
Communist Party chief Xi Jinping to centralize his power. So, they are now saying, no, you're too powerful. And they did last week remove his top military guy.
Yeah, I saw that. I think there's, everything's like sleight of hand and reading the tea leaves, just like the old Soviet Union, right? It was very hard to get the truth, but you have to think there's ways that you can tell, and their economy's like in a shambles. The
Yes.
real estate stuff's in a shambles. The infrastructure, because they built that stuff, only lasts like 15 years, and now it's starting to fall apart. You have that whole movement with the young. What do they call it? Laying flat, like just I don't care, I give up. The birth rate is like so low that they're decreasing in population at a huge rate. Now India is the biggest country population wise in the world.
Mhm.
They have major problems, and I think just like the old Soviet Union, the left overestimates the strength of China. I really think they're a paper tiger. Um, I mean, they were 100% reliant,
Yeah.
almost 100% reliant on us buying their stuff and the rest of the world buying their stuff. And at the mere hint of tariffs, they bent over fast as they could,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Yes.
And, yeah. And then you have the fact that these other economies, so they've been able to get by having this super cheap labor. Well, over time, you get these other economies that are coming along that are undercutting them. So you haven't elevated your working class to the point where they could do anything more than the most basic of things. So now along comes the Vietnams and the Thailands and the Philippines and all those other, and they're going to start taking their business, and they have created massive enemies in that part of the world, which is another side to this. That whole thing with the Spratly Islands and the Philippines
Hmm.
and Japan and Vietnam and Burma and all those countries that they've created massive enemies with that the press never talks about.
No.
That's a problem for them. So it's funny the talk of them invading Taiwan. I might have to eat my hat by saying this, but I just don't see it. I mean, they can threaten, they can beat their chest till the cows come home, but to do that, there's only about a 2 week window where that's even militarily possible. A lot of people don't realize that because of the weather in that strait is such that
Hmm.
there's only a couple of weeks where you can do it. There's only like one beach where you can do it. So everybody knows when and everybody knows where.
Yeah, there's no surprise, you know.
There ain't no surprise. I just don't see them doing it. And the Taiwanese are no fools. They're offshore to manufacturing someplace else. So
Yeah.
if you come here, you're not, guess what the prize is? Nothing. You're gonna get a giant turd. We're gonna blow up everything else, and so what's the prize?
Yeah.
It's not going to be like Hong Kong where you just steal the prize. They're not getting a prize, and the cost of getting the prize. I mean, wow, their military hasn't fought in a real war since the 40s. Their technology and equipment is absolutely horrendous. There was that big scandal, and this is one of the things that reason why Ping is in trouble. The rockets were sitting there with water in them instead of like fuel, and that
Oh
was a
boy.
major, and a bunch of generals and admirals went down over that. Performance issues with their new aircraft carriers and their rockets, like really bad performance issues. So,
That's
yeah, you
good
can,
news for us.
yeah, right. So there's all this talk about a million man, but quantity, doesn't necessarily trump quantity at some point. Quality rather. The quality's bad. Um,
Mhm. It
you
is.
know, and they're conscripts on top of that.
Yes. Yes. Well, we have more good news that we didn't get to talk about much was the Pentagon. So I have another story from the Epic Times, and the
Mhm.
Pentagon assesses the Iran nuclear program was set back 1 to 2 years.
That's it.
That's it. One
Huh.
to 2 years.
All right.
And it says certainly all of the intelligence that we've seen suggests those facilities were completely obliterated. Well, it was other countries that were supplying them with the material to put all that together. And so they can certainly rebuild. And remember, they didn't hit all of their facilities, they only hit three.
Mhm.
But 1 to 2 years, I'll take it. It's better to be 1 to 2 years than it was 1 to 2 weeks.
Hmm. Yeah, true. But I gotta noodle that around a little bit, right? 1 to 2 years, because I'm not. Okay.
So this is from a national security correspondent. His name is Andrew Thornbrook. And he says the Pentagon believes that American and Israeli strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities have delayed Tehran's nuclear program by as much as 2 years. And it was likely, he said, that Iran's capability to develop a nuclear weapon had been degraded by 1 to 2 years. So I don't know. He says Iran is much further away today from a nuclear weapon than they were before the president took the bold action to fulfill his promise to the American people. So I don't know. Noodle that around and let me know what you think. But I take that as good news. And was what did they're saying that they were not able to move any of their enriched uranium. I don't know that.
Yeah.
And
See, yeah,
you
I
know,
just don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough about the science, and I had not read the article really to speak to it. I guess I was hoping for more a yeah, 1 or 2 years is great, but you look at what the Israelis did back in the '80s when they took out that nuclear reactor. That set them back like 40 years, and then what they had to do in order to get this done at all was they had to go deep underground so they could like do it again, and
right.
think that they couldn't get taken out. So it would seem to me that this is at least an equal setback to that. This individual seems to think different, and hey, I'd have to read a bunch more stuff to like buy into that. But it would seem to me to set him back more than that, just based on what little I've seen from afar. um, because in order to make this stuff, you got to be in a place where you can feel safe doing it, and I don't think they have that safety right now, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I had heard that they have three other enrichment sites, and but the ones that they went after were the ones that could enrich it even further. Like I guess a facility can enrich it a certain percentage, and then it
Hmm.
has to you have to do something else to it in order to get it to be weapons grade.
Hmm.
And yes, Pat just said, I thought Trump said it was totally obliterated. Well, it is totally obliterated. That is what he said, but it doesn't mean you can't rebuild it. Just because there's an obliteration doesn't mean it can't be rebuilt. And they still have other sites that never got hit too. I think they had six, if I remember correctly, they had six and they hit three of them. And one being the Fordo being the worst one that had the most and was capable of that. I'll call it super enrichment for lack of knowledge of a better term of what they have to do there.
Yeah. And yeah, I think you have to take these things with a grain of salt too, because people have their ulterior motives, man. So, you know, is he accurate? Is he really truthful? I don't know. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
Yeah,
One thing for sure.
we'll live if we'll see. But I will tell you, I studied those two pictures
Mhm.
of it, the before and the after. I put them up on my computer and zoomed them in, and you
Mhm.
could see that the after picture the where there had been a valley is no more.
Hmm.
They actually changed the geographical or the topographical map
Hmm.
really a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so I went, wow, there was a lot of dirt move there,
Well,
to change the topography so much.
well, the threat, they're always going to keep trying to do this. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, you look at the Israelis again, going back to 45 years ago, they did it then. They're always going to keep trying to do it. It's just the world we live in, and we're probably always going to have to be on alert for doing this sort of thing. Hopefully, we won't wait. So, personally, I never could understand. I thought years ago, why are we waiting? Because we had terrible presidents.
Yes.
But
Yes.
this is something
No
that just
cojones. That's why.
no. Yeah, the old Neville Chamberlain appeasement approach. These people are not interested in your money. They're not interested in your goodies. They're not interested in any P Diddy action. They're interested in you being dead. And
Yeah.
I think it's so hard, particularly for the left, because they're so stuck in emotion, they don't really truly believe that evil exists. Speaking of that, did you hear about the Greta Thunberg thing the other day?
Mhm.
So she's the one that's always screeching. I think she's Norwegian, and
Yeah.
she's always screeching about climate change. Where I guess the climate thing burned out, and I got to talk to the climate thing in a minute.
Yes.
Yes, and she got on a boat, and now she's into the Palestinian thing. So now she's switched over to being a person who hates Jews, and she wanted to catch a boat in the boat and sail it to Gaza and help them out. Well, the Israelis intercepted the boat and, in her words, kidnapped her. And so while she was kidnapped, the Israelis are so kind. Now, I talk about kind. They offered her the opportunity to see the original footage, her and the other people that were on the boat, of what happened on October 8th, I guess it was. And of course, they refused to see it. Um,
Of course.
of course, right? But that's I can't remember how I got to that subject, but that's who they are. I know what it was. They
They're
just
faux protesters. What's going to give me back in the headlines? I just want to
that's
do something and get back in the headlines, get some more
that's
money.
She is the most obvious narcissist. I feel bad for her that her parents did that to her when she was a young kid
Yeah.
that I've ever seen. I mean, you got a 12-year-old speaking to the United Nations. Under what circumstance does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense at all, right?
You're right.
Uh,
You're right.
it's pure atmospherics, is what it is, right? So theater, just political theater, 100%. Um, but I know what it was. So it was this climate. This is the climate thing. I thought I'd be quickly talk about this. The climate propaganda machine stopped. So major U.S. climate websites shut down. This was like last week. It's one of those things that doesn't get much news, but it's huge. And it's the NOAA's official climate.gov. This is the propaganda website they use to constantly push that the world's going to end because of what man is doing, right? So for the federal government to shut that down completely, fire all of them, this is like a huge win. This is as huge as defunding Planned Parenthood, if we ever get around to doing that, would be. So we're kneecapping, and there's hundreds of these kinds of outfits, and we just keep kneecapping them, and it's just so awesome. So they have one less vehicle to fearmonger and scare people to death around this whole climate thing, the climate scam, which is precisely what it is.
Well, it is. I'm so glad they shut that down. Now, I saw today on social media that Marco Rubio made an announcement that USAID is in existence any longer.
Wow, that
It
is
is non-existent anymore. That's like huge news. That line, that money laundering scheme has dried up
you think about
totally.
of all the scams, and to say that it was the number one scam of them all, that's really saying something. You can hardly retain the things that they've done to the American people over the last 5, 10 years. I mean, it's like whether you're talking about the disaster with the train in Ohio, the pedophile scam, the P Diddy scam, the Epstein scam. I mean, you can't even keep this stuff straight. Um, you just forget, the Afghanistan disaster when Biden bailed and left all that equipment and resources there is like that's like a distant stuff so bad and so many. The guy was asleep in office and they propped him up anyway. The stolen election, the riots on purpose, the fires all over the place. Remember about this? They were like destroying like farm equipment and stuff. You might remember that.
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
impact the food supply. That was going on for a while. It's just you cannot keep straight this asymmetrical attack that the traders within the country were running. And,
Mhm.
definitely Democrats on the left and some of these rhino Republicans to boot. Um, and hopefully we get rid of all of them in the next election cycle.
Absolutely. Well, one more good news, and I read Lori's comment there, and thank you very much, Lori. But hang on, Mel, don't be leaving us. Um, One more super good news is the alligator Alcatraz. So I just posted a story about alligator Alcatraz from the Epic Times, and the deportation center is surrounded by 30,000 alligators. And they've built this up. It's been in existence, like the runway and all of this is where the Governor DeSantis would stage all of the hurricane disaster relief ahead of a hurricane. So it would all be right in the area and they could get it out easily. That's why this big, huge runway there. So they've built this thing up. Trump went over there and has said, you know what? All the states need to do this. So now I guess there's a few other states that have signed on and going, you know what? We can do this too. And they're saying now that there's going to be several hundred let's see, the cluster of temporary structures is large enough to hold up to 3,000 illegal immigrants and 1,000 staff. And it now stands next, and it stands next to a runway, huge runway, and the facility was paid for largely by the Department of Homeland Security. And so other states, I think it was Louisiana and Missouri, that says, well, we can do this too, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, because having the facilities, I love this.
Mhm.
This is a smart plan,
Mhm.
and you don't have to have a lot of people, because where are they going to go? They have to be in an airboat or a
Mhm.
helicopter in order to escape the place, because you're
Yeah.
not going to survive if you have to go swimming. You know.
And what a great jobs program too. That's the sort of thing I can support. The government's going to hire people for jobs. That's the kind of thing. It's like the military, right? You have to have military, and you have to have this sort of thing, right? So
Yes.
that's great.
And
Yeah.
then I wanted to let you go. A little announcement here is that on Friday is 4th of July. I wore my red, white, and blue and my red, white, and blue earrings, because that is in honor of 4th of July, celebrating our wonderful country. Because I will not be on the air on the 4th of July. I am going to go enjoy festivities. Let's see, it's starting at I think about 8 o'clock, with our local firemen having a pancake breakfast. I plan on going. I've missed that for many years because of my involvement in politics and being the chair of our local county, Umatilla County, which I'm no longer the chair. And so, therefore, now I get to participate in some other things that I used to do, and that was go support our firemen, since my husband is a retired captain of the fire department in Los Angeles. And also, I want to let you know that next week is going to more than likely be my last week on Captive Audience. And Don and I were talking about it a little ahead of time, a little before we started tonight. And actually, we are moving to Florida. So I'm going to make that announcement. We are moving to Florida, and Captive Audience have been doing this ever since we started. What is this going on 4 years? And but I'll be back as a guest periodically, and I will still continue to watch. But I do believe next week we'll probably be wrapping it up. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful 4th of July, and I'll see you. I'm still on social media and all of that, but we are relocating.
And I would say, as I told her, I will completely miss my weekly meeting with Sunny. It has been really a highlight of my week. I'll still be around. I'll be solo for a while. We'll see what we can get in terms of some other assistance, but I will definitely miss working with Sunny. I'll periodically invite her, even though she's going to be up at dark 30 if she does it. But we'll have her as a guest occasionally, because it's so much more fun bouncing back and forth with her than solo. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the audience as well, and I'm just so happy that she invited me to do this with her. So, and I'm going to miss you a lot.
Well, Don, I'm going to miss you a lot. I think it's been, I don't know how long you and I've been doing this. It's well over 2 years
Yeah,
that
I
you
think
and
it's been
I,
around 3 years. Yeah.
3 years. So, yeah, we've been doing Wednesdays for a long time, and it's been such a pleasure. And I bless Deb Tilden for introducing the two of us together. And we're friends. We're friends forever, Don. I'm
Yeah.
around and we're friends forever. I'm just not going to be a regular, as I have a lot to do in Florida and everything that's going on with our move and that. So big changes for us, for our family coming.
No doubt, no doubt. True that. And congratulations on the move, and thanks for all you've done for the Northwest for sure. It's you've had a huge impact. Know that you have a huge impact wherever you go because people like you are huge impact people, right? And I'm just proud to have met you and proud that we'll still be able to be in touch. And looking forward to seeing the rest of you all as well.
So with that, I bid you all a good night. Thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful 4th of July. Be safe. Come back with all 10 fingers, you know.
That's important.
Please.
That's important.
It
God
is.
bless America, everybody, and we will see you next week.